It is 6:05 in the evening, Friday, March 6, 1987. The Herald of Free Enterprise, a cross-channel ferry, pulls away from berth 12 in the harbor of Zeebrugge, Belgium, bound for Dover. On board are 459 passengers and 80 crew, families, day trippers, truck drivers, many of them taking advantage of a newspaper promotion offering cheap trips across the channel. The weather is calm, the sea is quiet. Nobody on the bridge knows that the bow doors are open. They have been open since the ferry's arrival in Zeebrugge, when they were opened to load vehicles onto the car deck. It was one man's job to close them again before departure. That man is asleep in his cabin. The ferry picks up speed. As it moves faster, seawater begins pushing up over the open bow, flooding directly onto the car deck. A deck with no internal walls to stop the water from spreading, no way to contain it. At 6:28 p.m., 23 minutes after leaving the dock, the Herald of Free Enterprise rolls onto its side. The capsize takes 90 seconds. 193 people die. Most of them drown in the freezing water, trapped inside a ship that has become, in less than 2 minutes, unrecognizable. Floors turned into walls, ceilings turned into floors, exits that no longer lead anywhere. The official investigation would find that one man fell asleep, but it would also find something far more damning, that this exact failure, doors left open at departure, had happened on this same route, on sister ships in this same company, at least 5 times before. Nobody had fixed it, because until this night, nobody had died. This is the story of the Herald of Free Enterprise. To understand how a ferry with hundreds of people aboard could sail out to sea with its bow wide open, you need to understand the ship itself and the business it was built for. The Herald of Free Enterprise was a roll-on, roll-off ferry, commonly called a ro-ro, operated by Townsend Thorson on the short but immensely busy crossing between Dover, England, and Zeebrugge, Belgium. Ro-ro ferries are designed around speed and efficiency. Vehicles drive directly onto a large open car deck through bow or stern doors, and drive directly off again at the other end, without needing to be craned or repositioned. It's an elegant design for commerce. It is also, structurally, a significant vulnerability, because the car deck runs the length of the ship without internal watertight compartments. If water gets onto that deck in any significant quantity, there is nothing to stop it from sloshing from side to side or from spreading the length of the vessel. Naval architects have a term for this: the free surface effect. Water on an open deck doesn't just add weight, it moves, and that movement can destabilize a ship far more violently and far more quickly than a fixed weight of the same amount would. The Herald of Free Enterprise had been built for a specific version of this design, with bow and stern doors that were opened at port for loading and were supposed to be sealed before the ship put to sea. On the evening of March 6, 1987, the ship's assistant boatswain, a crew member named Mark Stanley, whose job included closing the bow doors before departure, had spent the stop in Zeebrugge, supervising cleaning duties on the car deck. When his tasks were finished, he was released from duty by his supervisor, the boatswain. He went to his cabin to rest before the ship got underway again. He fell asleep. The ship's public address system announced harbor stations, the call for crew to report to their departure positions. Stanley did not wake up. He remained asleep in his cabin as the mooring lines were released and the Herald of Free Enterprise began to move. But the investigation that followed made clear that Stanley's failure was only the final link in a chain, and that the chain had multiple points where it could have, and should have, been broken. The chief officer, Leslie Sabel, was required by his own understanding of his role to remain on the car deck to confirm the doors were shut before heading to his own departure station. On this night, he left early, believing, based on a brief and mistaken glance, that he had seen Stanley already on the deck attending to the doors. He had not confirmed it. He went to his post. The captain, David Lurie, on the bridge above, had no way to check any of this himself. The Herald of Free Enterprise had no indicator light, no sensor, no warning system of any kind that would tell the bridge whether the bow doors were open or closed. The design of the ship meant the doors simply were not visible from where the captain stood. He operated, as every captain on this route operated, under an assumption that if nothing was reported to the contrary, the ship was ready to sail. Nothing was reported, so he sailed. Here is the detail that transforms this story from a tragic individual failure into something far more troubling. This had already happened before, more than once. In October 1983, 3.5 years before the Herald of Free Enterprise capsized, the assistant boatswain on a sister ship, the Pride of Free Enterprise, fell asleep in exactly the same way, missed the same harbor station's call, and the vessel left port from Dover with both its bow and stern doors open. That ship did not capsize. It made it across safely. The incident was recorded. It was known internally within the company. In response, the company, Townsend Car Ferries, issued a general instruction in July 1984, assigning responsibility for confirming the bow doors were secure to the officer loading the main vehicle deck before departure. Beyond the 1983 incident, the inquiry established that this same failure, a vessel in this fleet proceeding to sea with bow or stern doors open, had happened on at least 5 separate occasions across the company's ships. 5 times, the doors had been left open. 5 times the ship had made it to sea regardless, without catastrophic consequence. 5 times, the company had an opportunity to recognize that its system for confirming door closure depended entirely on individual memory and individual diligence, with no mechanical backup, no warning light, no redundancy of any kind. One of the company's own ship captains had recognized the danger. In 1985, 2 years before the disaster, that captain circulated a memo within the company suggesting that an indicator light be installed on the bridge, specifically to warn against the possibility of departure with the bow or stern doors open. The suggestion was not acted upon. The formal inquiry, led by Mr. Justice Sheen, would later describe the culture inside the company in language that has been quoted in safety literature ever since. From top to bottom, the inquiry concluded, the body corporate was infected with the disease of sloppiness. It went further. The report found that at first sight, the faults that led to the disaster appeared to be the individual errors of the master, the chief officer, and the assistant boatswain. But a full investigation into the circumstances, the inquiry concluded, led inexorably to the conclusion that the underlying cardinal faults lay higher up in the company. The board of directors, the report found, did not appreciate their responsibility for the safe management of their own ships. They did not apply their minds to the basic question of what orders should govern the safety of the vessels they operated. The company had received warnings about excess passenger loads, about ships proceeding without door indicator systems, about the very failure that would eventually sink the Herald of Free Enterprise. The warnings had come from within the company's own ranks, from captains who worked the ships every day and understood exactly where the danger lay. None of it changed anything until the night 193 people died. She came to rest in shallow water, close to shore, a stroke of fortune that allowed rescue services to reach survivors within a remarkably short window. Crew aboard a nearby dredger noticed the ship's lights disappear and immediately alerted port authorities. A German ferry captain nearby, Wolfgang Schroeder, brought his own vessel to assist and would later be personally commended for his role in the rescue. But for many of the passengers below decks, in cabins, in the cafeteria, walking along corridors that had, in the space of 90 seconds, become vertical shafts, there was no warning at all. One moment the floor was a floor, the next it was a wall, and they were falling. 193 people died, most from drowning in the frigid water. It remains the deadliest disaster involving a British-registered vessel in peacetime since 1919. Mark Stanley, the assistant boatswain who had fallen asleep, was found negligent, a finding he accepted without dispute. He had, by every account, been asleep when he should have been on duty. But in the chaos of the capsize itself, Stanley found his way out onto the hull of the overturned ship, and, despite a severe injury to his arm, sustained breaking a window to reach trapped passengers, went back into the freezing water repeatedly to help pull survivors free, until he was overcome by cold and blood loss himself. The inquiry noted that he had frankly recognized his failure and would, in its words, suffer remorse for a long time to come. There is a permanent memorial to the 193 victims at St. Mary's Church in Dover. The ship herself was salvaged, sold, renamed, and eventually scrapped in Taiwan the following year. What remains, more than anything, is the pattern. 5 times, the doors had been left open before. 5 times, the ship made it to sea. A captain saw the danger clearly enough to propose a solution. The solution sat in a memo, unacted upon, for 2 years. The disease of sloppiness, as the inquiry called it, does not announce itself. It does not feel like negligence from the inside. It feels like ordinary business, ordinary shortcuts, an ordinary night at sea, right up until the 90 seconds when it doesn't. Subscribe to Error Code Human, featuring new documentaries every week.